Okay, so you've heard the phrase better late than never.
Right.
So that's what we are on this Patreon bonus episode because we had some problems. We had a massive thunderstorm come through a few weeks
tornado.
ago. Yeah, it was a tornado. It was. We had
Yeah.
a tornado warning actually shut down production of the Hopecast the day we were doing.
We were halfway through recording the episode, and
Yeah.
then Jarvis came in and was like, "Hey guys, there's a tornado. We should probably stop recording."
Not just, hey, there's a tornado, in the area. There's a tornado. We need to shut down and go into higher ground, that kind of thing. So anyway, we lost the episode, the bonus episode for July. So we're making up for it right now.
In August.
In August, right. So we'll
Yeah.
have to have another bonus. We'll catch up.
We'll
but we
figure
wanted
it
to
out.
say thank you to everybody that has joined us recently on Patreon. We really appreciate it. It's starting to grow, starting to pick up steam a little bit, and we're super thankful.
So we kind of wanted to take this opportunity to share a little bit more about us. So for the first bonus episode that we did on Patreon, I shared my testimony. Today, you're going to be sharing yours.
Yeah.
Just how you got saved and your life before Christ and what all that looked like. So start at the very beginning. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? And what was your kind of childhood like? Did you grow up going to church? No. What was that like?
Well, I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. I was born and raised there, and I wouldn't say that I grew up in a Christian home. We did go to church occasionally. I would say I grew up in a very moral home, a very straight arrow kind of home. You did the right things. You always had good manners. You never took the shortcuts, that kind of thing, but not a Christian home. And but I can say that I don't ever remember a time when I didn't know who Jesus was and what he came for and why he came, because I wound up going to a Christian school. The way it worked was we lived on a lake, and one side of the lake, the school district filtered into a school that really nobody wanted to go to, and it's a really tough, difficult high school, and that was the side we lived on. And so my parents made the decision to send me to a Christian school, and I spent my entire life there, kindergarten through 12th grade. And so I had that Christian foundation from the very beginning. And just little by little, we would have chapel 3 times a week, and I just kept hearing over and over about the gospel. And I'll never forget, there was one time, and you probably don't know this name, but maybe if you're a sports fan, you remember the name Pete Maravich. He was one of the...
That sounds familiar. Who is he?
He was Pistol Pete Maravich.
Pistol Pete, yeah.
He was the first ever $1 million athlete. He signed a contract for $1 million, the first ever one to do that.
I've seen the movie Pistol Pete. That's
okay.
where it's familiar to me.
Well, actually, here's a sidebar about the movie Pistol Pete. The kid that played Pete in the movie, I went to high school with.
Oh, okay.
And his mom taught me earth science.
That's funny.
So yeah,
Cool.
there's that connection there. But we were in chapel one time, and I watched the testimony. I knew Pistol Pete, the name. He was from LSU, which was a big deal from where we were at the time. And
yeah.
He gave his testimony. We watched a videotape of his testimony, I think through Focus on the Family, and I was just blown away. And I remember God really speaking to my heart at that time about that. And that really was a kind of a turning point too. And then why I was watching the 700 Club as a 10 or 12-year-old kid, I don't know, but I was.
You've always been a 90-year-old on the inside,
I guess I kind of have. Yeah. And the 700 Club used to do, and I think still does, they'll do a feature on just regular average people, how God's worked in their life somehow, some way.
Sorry, this is a rabbit trail. Have I told you I've been to a recording of the 700 Club?
No.
Yeah, when I was probably like 6.
Really?
I went with my grandparents. They were visiting, and we went to DC. We toured all around, and then we went to the studio where they record the 700 Club, and it was freezing cold in there. They gave blankets to the audience members
because
the lights are so hot that they have to keep it really cool. And so we were covered in blankets and watched it happen. So I'm sharing the elderliness with you. I went to a recording when I was 6. You're watching it when you're 10.
Yeah, I'm watching the 700
Sorry,
Club.
back to your thing.
And what they normally do as just a matter of format, they'll run a video package on a person who somehow, some way God's used or God's worked through in supernatural ways or just in really neat ways. And then at the end of it, they come in and they give an invitation. And I don't remember the guy's name, but he was an African-American guy. It used to be Ben. He was named Ben. It was Ben, Terry, and Pat. Pat Robertson was the three that hosted it. And I just remember at that time him giving an invitation and me just realizing, okay, I want to say this prayer. And I meant it. And I just remember the burden lifting. And I just remember, you know, I wasn't a bad kid, didn't have anything really bad going on. Cause like I say, I grew up in a really moral, straight laced kind of house, but everything kind of changed right then. And I remember that it kind of took, and then I got baptized. But one of the things, and again, I'm not going to blame anybody, but one of the things as growing up in the denomination I did, it was all about salvation. You always heard about salvation. You give your heart to the Lord, give your life to the Lord. And that's what you got to do, because, you know, there is a judgment coming at some point, and God wants to save your soul. He sent Jesus to die for you. So you need to accept him as your savior. But there wasn't anything behind that, or at least not that I really paid attention to for the most part.
You mean like discipleship,
Yeah,
like mentoring
exactly.
after that? Okay.
Exactly. Now, it was there, but I don't know whether I was not encouraged enough to do it or what the thing was, but I just never followed through. I mean, I was baptized and I thought that was pretty much it.
I think though that's kind of, that can be the case in a lot of churches, that it's like the goal is just to get people saved, which is true, but it's go and make disciples.
That's right.
You know, so it's not just sharing the gospel with people, but it's encouraging them in their faith and helping them grow.
I completely agree, because I think I fell into that trap. And again, I don't want to blame the church or the pastor, because there was really good people there.
And obviously salvation is the first step.
Right.
Like, you need that.
Right. Yeah. It's the first step, but
yeah.
it's just the first step on a journey.
Right.
And I didn't comprehend that.
You thought it's like one and done.
Yeah, pretty
this
much.
Is all there is.
I didn't know what else to do.
Right.
You know, I thought, well, you go to church, but okay. I mean, all the messages are about being saved. Well, I've done that. You know, what's next?
What's after that?
Well, it took 3 or 4 more years till I was just about ready to graduate high school. And God kind of convicted me of that as well. And it happened through music. I was listening to a song on the radio, and it was Billy Dean, who was famous in the 90s, country music singer in the 90s. For 15, 20 minutes, he was famous. And the song was called "You Don't Count the Cost." And it talked about a mom giving birth, you know, the pain, the trials, whatever, but you don't count the cost. And then a soldier fighting for the country, you know, you don't count the cost for all the sacrifice and whatever. And then it says, if you ever doubt it, just think about the cross. When it comes to love, you don't count the cost. And it really just spoke to my heart. God just really kind of got a hold of me there. And I was like, okay, God, I want to do whatever you want me to do. I don't know what that means. I don't know, but I'm just surrendering right here, right now. So I feel like had I, you know, something unfortunate happened, you know, I would have gone to heaven in those years between 12 and 17.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I was 17 that I was really understood that there's something more. I didn't know what it was, but that's when I kind of grabbed a hold of it and really decided, okay, that's the way I'm going to live. And what's been really neat for me is it's kind of come full circle, because now the last probably 5 or 10 years, probably more like 10 years, I've worked with kids, you know, 5th, 6th grade, Sunday school class, with the sole purpose of, okay, we're going to live out our faith. You've heard the gospel. A lot of them have made decisions, but we're going to take the next step. And we even called the little Sunday school class James 1:22, be doers of the word and not hearers only. And we explain that and want to make sure they understand.
That's cool, though, that you're kind of being that person that you maybe didn't have when you were in 5th or 6th grade.
It really is. And I never sought out to do that.
Yeah.
Because really, I didn't think I'd ever want to work with kids. I thought I'd work with college age, and I did for a while. Didn't really click there. Thought, well, maybe I'll work with youth. Maybe I'll work with, and I couldn't get the youth on the Save Week either. And man, when I was able to the first time I ever talked to kids, it clicked. And it was like, this is what I need to do. This is it's because I had their attention. They seemed like they cared about what I was talking about. And I've been doing it ever since. And it's been really a joy. And now I'm getting to the point where our first few classes of 5th and 6th graders, they're graduating high school and getting married and going on to college and the whole thing. So it's been kind of cool to see them grow up and to be able to have been a little bitty part of their lives, you know,
Yeah.
forming their foundation of their faith, you know?
Well, and I think what you brought up earlier that, you know, just because you have grown up in like a moral household doesn't mean that you grew up in a Christian household. Like, because I think what you've said before, you were a pretty good kid.
Yeah.
And
No,
didn't
I never
really-
got in trouble at
Yeah,
all.
wasn't super rebellious or anything like that, but you still weren't saved. And so, like, it just goes to show you need those people in your life to point you in the right direction and show you the gospel, but then taking that additional step of discipleship and mentoring.
I tell you, one of my favorite Bible teachers is Alistair Bagg.
Do you like him just because of the accent, though?
Well, no, it's that doesn't hurt.
That adds to it.
That adds to it. But I'm telling you, he talked about one time, John chapter 3 and John chapter 4, and he said, okay, you've got two diametrically opposite people in those chapters. You've got Nicodemus and you've got the woman at the well. And both of them needed Jesus. Nicodemus would be more righteous than any of us put together. If anybody really deserved heaven on his own works, it would have been Nicodemus.
Right.
Because he was that good and that righteous, where the woman at the well was not. She was the opposite. But yet they both had that one need in common. And I thought, that's right. You know, and that's and I'm kind of example of that. Not that I would have been, you know, crazy righteous like Nicodemus probably was.
Yeah.
But I was further on that side of the ledger
Yeah.
than the other. But I still needed Christ.
Well, it goes to show that, you know, we're all depraved. There's maybe different levels of like where you're at. You know, you could be a relatively good person, but still
Right.
unsaved, or you could be a really horrible criminal or something like that and still need Jesus. But it just goes to show that we're all in need.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's like jumping the long jump, you know, whatever the record long jump is, you know. Okay, some of us will get closer than others,
Yeah.
but we're all going to miss the mark. None
Right.
of us can jump farther than that,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. And so, yeah, and that's why I guess I feel the need to make sure that kids understand before they get into high school and before they get into college, when they really start making their minds up on what they're doing, to understand on the front end, here's what God says, and here's how a relationship with God looks like. Now have that armor or have that ammunition, I guess, when you get ready to make these decisions, instead of trying to make them in a vacuum. Maybe those that I have in my class, I can kind of compare them and prepare them a little bit and get them ready for what comes next. And hopefully they'll make some wise decisions and wise choices, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, good. This was fun. I enjoyed hearing this about you. Like, I've heard kind of bits and pieces of your testimony, but I feel like we got the whole
Yeah.
overarching story.
There you go. So
it was good.
Yeah, thank you for asking us to do our testimonies. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.